everybody, and welcome to a brand new edition of T Watches a Scary Movie. My name is T, and we're talking scary movies. I appreciate everybody coming in and tuning in for another brand new episode here on YouTube. You can always find our new episodes and also get alerts for when other videos are going up by subscribing to the YouTube page at youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. Again, that's youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. If you get subscribed, you get all the information for when new episodes are going up, which is every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And you can be alerted when any other videos I'm putting up are going up as well. And then, of course, we have our watch parties. Every Wednesday after the new episode, we do a watch party where we take a look at least one of the movies that we talked about in our new episode. So, tonight, after we are done with this episode, we are watching Fear Street Part 2. Yeah, Fear Street Part 2, 1978. And we're going to watch Escape Room. Yeah, we are watching Fear Street 2 and Escape Room tonight now, which is letting you know we're talking, which of course is Fear Street Part 2, 1978, and Escape Room. So that's what we got coming in store tonight. But if you do want to join us for our watch parties, you got to make sure that you're joining the Facebook group, because the Facebook group will actually get you the link to actually join those up, as well as you can join our fun conversations that we have throughout the week, see some funny memes we put up. It's a good time for everybody. And that site is facebook.com/groups/T Scary Movie. Again, facebook.com/groups/T Scary Movie. Join that up. You'll get all the information for when we're doing our watch parties and all the other fun that we're having as well, too. So, I want to get right into things here. Last week, in our continued Summer of Horror series, we talked the first Fear Street movie and the Forever Purge. Now, the first Fear Street movie I enjoyed quite a bit, even though it tried to make it seem like it was going to be, your typical like 90s slasher and everything like that. We quickly found out that the first Fear Street had more of a supernatural twist to it than it did just being a straightforward, slasher murder mystery kind of movie. It was a lot of fun, even with the small cast, and it had a healthy dose of nostalgia for us as well, too. Like, again, me being a big 90s kid, watching this, I felt right at home. I was like, man, this feels like the childhood I could have had at one point in my life there, minus all the death and dismemberment and murder that's going on. Now, the first film does end off on a cliffhanger. And I mean, it's kind of hard because I have my 10-year rule about spoilers, but it's going to be really hard to talk about these without getting into a couple specific spoilers. So just as a heads up, if you're trying to keep yourself completely clear of knowing anything watching these movies, then you shouldn't be listening to tonight's episode. It's not going to be spoiler heavy or anything like that, but I am going to talk about a few things that are going to be referenced, all right? So if you're listening right now, now is the time that you're going to want to tune out, okay? So, if you recall, the first Fear Street movie ended with Dina and her brother Josh having to restrain Dina's girlfriend Sam, who is now possessed by the witch, who is behind all of the murders in that first film. Now, towards the end of the first movie, as a way to try to figure out what's going on, Dina and her friends contact somebody named C. Berman, who is said to be one of the only people who has dealt with the curse of the witch before and everything involved with that. Now, they contact her. They don't hear back till towards the end of the movie, to where C. Berman lets them know, hey, nothing is done yet. The witch is absolutely still going to try to enact her curse. You're not actually safe. And our second movie starts off with C. Berman meeting with our heroes, with Dina and Josh, along with a restrained Sam. And C. Berman going back and telling of her story of what she dealt with the Curse of the Witch back in 1978 at Camp Nightwing. Now, it's a great start because honestly, I didn't really know what to expect. The fact that this was both technically a sequel and a prequel, hence the name. It is part 2, so obviously it's a sequel, but the majority of this film does take place in 1978 and really doesn't have that much to do with the story that was set up in part 1. So I wasn't really sure what to expect here. Now, the trailer for Fear Street Part 2 definitely made this seem like this was going to be very reminiscent of like Friday the 13th. There's obviously a lot of parallels between Fear Street Part 2 and the first couple Friday the 13th films, I would say as well too. The fact that it's at a summer camp, that we do have a killer who's going around and murdering not just counselors, by the way, but campers as well too. Yeah, Fear Street's still not saving anybody here. Everybody's in play for murder in this case here. But like the vibes of the trailer for Fear Street Part 2 definitely made this seem like this was going to be like another old school slasher flick, which I wasn't against because honestly I thought the first Fear Street film was a lot of fun because it really wasn't our traditional 90s slasher film. It wasn't anything meta like Scream really was either, but it felt right at home. And I definitely was expecting Fear Street Part 2 to kind of lean more into that and give us just more direct nods to older horror movies and things like that. And I found myself honestly disappointed with this movie. I'm just going to level with y'all. I did not enjoy Fear Street Part 2. Now, casting wise, we get a few familiar names in this one, just like we had in part 1 as well. So Sadie Sink, who we all know from Stranger Thing fame, is our main character here. She plays Ziggy Berman, or I guess one of our main characters. Let me change that around. But it plays Ziggy, who is one of our main characters here, along with Emily Rudd, who plays her sister Cindy. So the Berman sisters are our main characters. Now, it's interesting because again, the character at the end of their first Fear Street and the beginning of the second one, named C. Berman, we don't know though who specifically she is. So it's actually going to be hard for us to tell. And that's part of the spoiler that we're not going to go into, that we don't know which of the sisters C. Berman actually is. C. Berman played by Gillian Jacobs. Now, that would give away a big plot point, letting you know who that is before. The thing that we start the film off with, and this is not a spoiler, is that we find out that C. Berman went to summer camp at Camp Nightwing and dealt with the Curse of the Witch, and that a week later, her sister was dead. But we don't know who is who. So we're spending the entire movie trying to figure out, all right, so which one of these girls is actually going to die in this film, okay? And for everything wrong that I feel that this movie did, it did also hit me with a bit of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The beginning feels with it, because those of y'all that remember in my review of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, which we talked about in our second. Oh, no, we didn't talk about that. That's right, because we ended up not being able to get that episode going. But we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning a couple weeks ago. For those of y'all that joined us watching that movie, I talked about the fact that when I saw that in theaters, I forgot that it was a prequel. So I was incredibly surprised when, hey, Jordana Brewster gets a chainsaw through her chest at the end of that film, because I was expecting her to get out. Like, I did not see that coming in the least bit. Here in Fear Street Part 2, I also forgot that this is technically a prequel as well. And that's all I'm going to say, that the ending I did not see coming, and I definitely should have. So, Ziggy's an outsider, okay? Ziggy is from Shadyside, which is obviously like it's the other side of the tracks as what was established in the first Fear Street film. It's kind of the more poor and disenfranchised people in the actual the town itself, but they're going to camp along with a bunch of people from Sunnyvale, which is the rich, upscale, nicer town that you want to live in. Now, Ziggy's sister, Cindy, is a bit of a square. She doesn't curse. She doesn't smoke. She doesn't drink. She doesn't have sex. She's just the straight-laced girl at summer camp trying to enjoy all the fun that summer camp has. But, unfortunately, the possessions of Sarah Fear are still happening here at summer camp. And while trying to figure out what's going on with this curse, the possession happens again and murders start to occur here at Camp Nightwing. Now, the downside about this is that the character who ultimately ends up getting possessed and becomes our killer in this film, we're really supposed to care a lot more about, because the movie is not, it's not a short movie, actually. Like, I actually felt this movie was a lot longer than what it really seemed, and kind of like the first movie did as well. The first movie really made it seem like had a lot of false endings. They're like, okay, the movie's done, there's nothing else for us to look at, and then surprise, there's still way more left in it. Same with this one, to where we forget a lot of times that this is really a story about a witch. It's about possession and things like that, because we might be a little bit more focused on the killer in this camp and all the murders that this killer is committing. And then we kind of forget that after the killer is kind of dispatched and a number of other characters have died, that, oh wait, there's a bigger story at play here with that. But the problem is the focus that gets put on the killer in this one here, the focus is kind of misdirected. Typically, we don't spend that much time on somebody becoming a killer unless we're trying to give them like redeemable qualities. So without spoiling it, the person who ends up becoming the killer in this film, we spend so much time with them, but the idea really should be, if we're spending this much time with them, we should expect that there's a chance they come back, that there's a chance that they can turn back to normal and be their old self again, that the characters can save them. Kind of like the first movie did with one of our with Sam, basically, with Dina's girlfriend Sam. The idea is they're not giving up because they think that Sam can be saved. And it's the same idea with the character that becomes the killer in this film, is that we spend so much time with this character that after they become the killer of this tale, it's kind of insulting that there is absolutely no chance that they're gonna come back from this and be a normal person. And it ends up just kind of being silly, because then like it's a whole case of, oh no, why are you doing this? What are you doing? Don't kill them, don't hurt them and stuff. And it's like, well, that's a waste of time. Like, we don't really need to spend this much time on this character because there is no redeemable qualities. And that's actually not even important. It becomes less important as the movie goes on. We don't care that much about what happens to this character after they become the killer. And that's a big glaring oversight of this film, I feel. Had this character not been made to be as important, then we would have just taken it as, it's just another random killer. It's somebody that's possessed. We don't have to worry about it really that much, honestly. But they didn't do that. They put so much focus on the killer of this tale that it's a slap in the face later on that we have any expectations that things are going to work out positively for that character coming back. So we split everybody up. We have a couple characters who are investigating the mystery of the witch itself and getting more information on the backstory of the witch and what led up to this and everything surrounding that. And then one of the other sisters is running around the camp trying to stay alive while our killer is hunting people down. And I'll give the movie credit. The first Fear Street was gory. It was brutal. This one is too. There are some very, very intense kills in this film as well, but interestingly enough, they shy away from showing the deaths of preteens, which I know sounds silly to say. when you think back to horror movies in the 60s and the 70s and in most of the 80s, most of the characters getting killed in those films are teenagers. Like, believe it or not, yes, they're all played by people in their 20s typically, but most of the characters being killed are absolutely teenagers. The 90s, we kind of got away from that, okay? Like, I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream were kind of like the last hurrahs, really, for teenagers being killed. Yes, there are still some exceptions we've had since then, but it's definitely not the amount that we had happening back in, again, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. Now it's young adults. It's legal kids, kids graduating from kids that graduated from high school, kids in college. That's typically what we're seeing, or early 20-somethings. We're not seeing a lot of kids being done. So the counselor's getting killed in this tale, not that out of the ordinary, okay? Like, we can come to expect that because those are the kind of kids that were getting killed in the first Fear Street as well. But the fact that campers actually get killed in this story, actual kids are getting killed in this story as well, is actually kind of like just crazy to see. I don't know if I'm against it because, again, that's the shocking part of those old horror films. When you really think about that, that makes them scarier to know that they are actually killing off kids in those films. These days, it's not that we're against it. It's just you don't really do that now. So it's not that I felt like insulted or outraged or anything. It's just kind of like, you would have been fine just killing camp counselors. It doesn't sell your story anymore by killing campers itself. So I don't know. But there are some big and some very visceral and bloody death scenes in this film, to the point to where one of the last scenes involving our main characters, and if you've watched it by now, you know what I'm talking about, is actually one of the more brutal death scenes I have seen in a movie in a little while now, too. Usually, like, I mean, everything's very cartoony in horror films when folks are getting killed, when they're getting stabbed, things like that. And I feel that they kind of made this very, very, like, realistic with the way that some of these characters were killed, and especially the final scene involving some of our main characters as well, too. Man, that is That was intense for sure, and you'll know it when we watch it later tonight there. But the blood is there, the gore is there, the kills are fun and cool and everything as well too. They telegraph a few things though, including one character who I won't say who that character is, but they give this very impassioned speech about how they're going to be a part of ending this, this mystery and ending what's going on once and for all. And like, it's very impassioned, but the way horror movies work, it's like the Samuel L. Jackson effect. Anytime you give a speech like that, we have to murder you, like right away, right afterwards, because of course, because you've mentioned how you have to be a part of what's going on, you can't be a part of what's going on. So that was kind of fun, but they do telegraph a few things here. But I don't know, y'all. The lot of the fun of the first film was that we started off moving from a slasher to a supernatural tale, and then we started getting more killers. We got Ruby Lane, I think is who it is, and then we also got our we got our axe murderer and everything as well too. And it's like, oh, cool, like now we're opening it up, like we got a bunch of people coming in this. In this one, we spend most of the time with just the singular axe murderer. So this is this killer's tale, but then we do open it up at the end, to, like the first one did as well, to where we start introducing the other killers as well too. And I did like that. I like the recurring theme of, oh, okay, like multiple killers are coming out, so the witch can enact her revenge and everything. But again, the problem is that the characters that we're following, our protagonists, were not that interesting. Honestly, I expected a lot more coming out of Sadie Sink's character here, and maybe it's just because I'm having a hard time dropping the Stranger Things connection, to where they do give her character in Stranger Things a lot more to do. She has way more of a character in that, and I just didn't feel that way coming from her character here in Fear Street. The acting's not bad. The acting is actually, it's funny because I think the acting is 100% reminiscent of horror films around that time, which, it's kind of on the bad side, but that's kind of on purpose as well too. So it's not a bad thing there at all. But I don't know. I felt that there was a lot missing from this movie. I really did. I wasn't as enamored with it as I was with the first one. I found myself getting bored. I found myself laughing at a lot of this as well too. It didn't do for me what I thought it was. I was expecting to like this movie the most out of the 3 Fear Street movies, and thus far it's definitely ranked as the second one of the 3 here, which is not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all there. I don't know. Wasn't feeling it. Wasn't feeling it as much. I think y'all are going to be wanting for a lot more watching this one as well too. Again, the kills are fun. They're inventive. They're scary and everything. But you're just not getting much in the terms of story from this. The connections back to the first Fear Street are good, and I'm glad we're continuing that story as well. But the hard twist that they look like they're going to be making with Fear Street Part 3 is already not sitting well with me, honestly. I don't think this is going to work out as well as they're hoping that it's really going to. And I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. But I'm really, really not counting on that too much, honestly. I don't think this is going to work out the way that they're really hoping that it will there. So that is Fear Street Part 2, 1978. If you're coming to this because you were hoping to get a healthy dose of Friday the 13th nostalgia, this really is not the film for you, unfortunately. They dropped the ball on this one for sure, I thought. And it's interesting thinking that these movies were supposed to have a theatrical release. You know, we talked about that in our watch party as well, that all 3 of these films were shot back in 2019. And they were all supposed to have theatrical releases last year, I want to say. Like, they were all supposed to be released within like 3 to 4 months of each other coming out there now. I don't know how well this one would have done. Like, it might have gotten the buy-in from the first film, but I just don't know. Not a big fan of this one here. It's definitely the weak link so far. Let's bring on Part 3. That's Fear Street Part 2, y'all. And that leaves us with our second film that we're talking today, which is going to be Escape Room. Yeah, we are talking the 2019 psychological horror. It is Saw Jr., Saw Light, whatever you want to call it here, Escape Room. So, I'm going to be honest about this. I was not a big fan of this film when I first saw it. When I checked it out, I really did see it as Saw for kids because, first of all, this film is PG-13. Okay, this is not a rated R horror film, and I have a thing a lot of times against PG-13 horror since the year 2000 because PG-13 horror is usually crap. There's no way around that. There's no nice way to say it. There are definitely some exceptions. I mean, it's not the rule, obviously, but I just don't enjoy PG-13 horror. Usually you're going to get a lack of blood. You're going to get a lack of scares. It's really going to be for teenagers to go see, and that is your target audience. Now, think about it here, though. Escape rooms have been gaining so much popularity in the last decade, okay? So it was inevitable that somebody was going to make a movie out of it, okay? Saw, again, is kind of like an escape room on acid. It is the worst absolute case scenario where you're losing limbs, you're losing blood, you're losing everything here. And then there are other movies based on certain similar kind of games. Like, for example, there's a horror movie based on Never Have I Ever. That's definitely a big one there. And then, oh God, there's another one I saw, and it might be the Never Have I Ever one. I don't think it is though. There's another one where they keep making bets with each other as well too. It's got Brittany Snow and Sasha Grey in it, of all people, as well too. That actually was a good one as well. But Escape Room. First of all, let's talk about the fact of who's behind the camera on this one. So, Adam Robitel is our director of this film. Now, If that name sounds familiar, it probably should, because he comes from a lot of horror. Adam Robitel actually wrote and directed The Taking of Deborah Logan, which is one of the more boring but has some scary visual possession movies that are out there. He wrote the Paranormal Activity spinoff, The Ghost Dimension. He directed the third Insidious movie. I think it was the third one, Insidious: The Last Key. So he does have some credits to his name for sure, because he has done some horror that we definitely know for sure out of that. But coming in here, he takes a cast of some people that we do know. You got Deborah Ann Wall from True Blood and Daredevil and everything. You got Tyler Labine from Tucker and Dale versus Evil, Reaper from the first Planet of the Apes reboot and everything. You have Logan Miller, who actually was a part of Ultimate Spider-Man that I love so much. Great TV show. But he was actually in Love, Simon and The Bling Ring, and was in what's that other one? Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. So he's been in a few things as well. So he's got a few cast members here. But the idea is that a group of people are brought together for a chance to win a $10,000 prize by completing an escape room. So we have a bunch of different people, all from different backgrounds, that are put together. Now, they don't know each other. They're not friends. They're not family. All they know is that they're going to be taking part in what's likely going to be the most extreme escape room that they've ever been a part of. And after getting into the waiting room, getting to know each other just a little bit, everything begins and the traps begin to be set off. Now, in comparison to a series like Saw, to where there's a lot of connections in the back end of things. So this character did this person the Jigsaw this one time, or this person did this thing to a person that knows Jigsaw, or this one did something to the Jigsaw apprentice or anything like that. That's not really the idea here of escape room. The Saw series implies a bit of accountability, that the characters that are in these predicaments are there because they kind of deserve to be in these predicaments in the first place, and they're going to learn to value life and everything after getting out of them, if they do get out of them. Escape room isn't going for that same kind of feel. The idea of escape room here is that these characters are all, for the most part, inherently innocent, okay? They are all survivors, okay? And I'm not going to go deeper into that, because that is something that it does play some significance to the importance of the story here. But the idea is that these characters haven't really wronged anybody in their lives. And I say that and I start thinking about a few characters, and I know that's definitely not necessarily true. But again, they all have been taken from their mundane existences and placed into a chance to win some money, which is life-altering money. $10,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. And they quickly find out that these are rooms that can actually kill you, okay? Yeah, the production value seems super high, and there's some jokes made that, well, obviously they can't set every room that they go into on fire. That would just take too much money to put something like that on. But as the characters start dying one by one by one, they start realizing that something more sinister is at work here, and they have to find out who's behind this, who's causing what they're trapped in now. There isn't much past that in the way of the story to really get into. If you understand that folks are fighting for their lives and the chance to possibly win $10,000 here, then you have the entire story that is Escape Room. What is interesting to see is the more that we learn about these characters as we go through, and what they would actually do to make it out with their lives. One character in particular I did really love in this movie, and that is the character of Jason Walker, that's played by a guy named Jay Ellis. Now, if you know Jay Ellis, he was in The Game, which is another great show back on BET. He was also on another popular show recently here called Insecure on HBO as well. So he's been in a few things that we know, but what I found most interesting about it, and it's especially now it's a good time to bring this kind of thing up there, is that the kind of character that Jason is is not somebody we would typically see played by an African American. Jason basically is playing this straight-laced guy who works doing like he's a stock trader or stockbroker, something like that, whatever the case is there now. But he's playing the tough guy who doesn't have time for people's shit, thinks he knows better, he's rude, he's condescending, and occasionally there are times where we can see that they might be a caring person, but they just go right back into being an asshole whenever possible, and maybe some of the things that they've told us about their background isn't necessarily true. Maybe they're more of an asshole than what we initially thought that they were. And I was so pleased to see a character like that because, number one, it's a black guy named Jason, and I always had this obsession with being named Jason when I was a kid because I'm Power Ranger, so, that's neither here or there. But then, two, this role would 100% be played by a white man in any other movie that there was in history, okay? And that's not to knock that, times aren't changing, because they are changing, but it was refreshing to see this role was played by an African American, that you have an African American in this kind of alpha male asshole role compared to everybody else that's in there. It was so refreshing because I hated Jason. Jason is the worst fucking character in this movie. He's such a dickbag. But it was so cool to see somebody that looks like me playing a role like that because you don't see that at all. And it's just opening the door. Guys, we can play assholes now. All my black males out there, guys, we can play the strong asshole type in these movies now. We did it. Yes, we can. But yeah, y'all, I mean, what can I say about Escape Room? There's not much in the sense of mystery and intrigue. Because I'll tell you, watching it, while I thought the rooms were cool, I did think the movie had some cool parts about it, I wasn't interested in finding out who was behind everything. Like, there's this whole mystery that some of the characters want to know. Who's pulling the strings? Who is the games master? Who is putting everybody in all of these predicaments and situations? And it's like, yeah, I don't actually care. Like, it's the first movie. Like, usually something like that, you need to save for the second movie to set up that mystery. Like, in the first Saw, and I hate keep coming back to the well on this one, but that's what we got to do. In the first Saw film, like, yeah, we want to know who's putting these characters in. We want to know who Jigsaw is and everything as well, too. But we don't really care that much. We're more focused on Dr. Gordon and Adam and what they're dealing with as opposed to who's the one that's pulling the strings. Saw 2 and everything past that is what really got us into knowing more about John Kramer himself. So I kind of feel that Escape Room trying to build that in this first film, because they are universe building, okay? This film was produced for $9 million. It was absolutely made to be a low-budget franchise because it's PG-13 horror that fits perfectly in the early 2000s. You better believe they wanted to make a franchise out of this, which makes sense because the sequel comes out here this week. But they were counting their chickens before they hatch, because I just don't feel that you can watch this movie and give two shits about who the game master is or anybody else involved with the people that are running these games in these rooms. There's no reason to care about it. Hell, we don't really have a reason to care that much about our characters because, to be honest, our characters are annoying. Our characters are rude. Our characters just aren't the kind of people that we really would be that interested in following. But it's kind of interesting because that makes it more realistic to us than a movie like Saw is. Like, I feel like Saw, you don't really see yourself or your friends in a lot of those characters that are in that series. Whereas here in Escape Room, I feel like the characters that are in there, you could see a friend or two of yours being the people that are in this movie. And maybe that's why we don't like these characters, because you actually see some of your real friends in there, and it's like, God, y'all fucking suck. Whereas in Saw, it's like, oh, this is Hollywood people now. We don't have to care because we don't see Hollywood people in real life. And maybe that's a really good thing about it. Maybe it really is that these are people that we absolutely are able to recognize. But who knows? Who knows? Either way, though, this movie is not that deep. You are really watching it because you're watching these characters go from room to room to see who survives and how they make it out of each of these elaborate puzzles. it is kind of fun to think about what the ultimate solution to the room is going to be, because it is an escape room. You have to remember that. It is an escape room overall, so they do want these characters trying to get through it like you would a typical escape room, just with more danger at play. So it is fun to kind of look at it and trying to figure out, how do our characters get out of each of these rooms? And a lot of these rooms really correspond to each of the characters, to where it's going back into their history and it's relating to an event that they went through themselves. And they all do have really, really sad stories for sure, but it doesn't make these characters enduring. Now, obviously, we are talking a sequel, and if you've seen the trailer for the sequel, you can see that at least a couple of characters survive our first escape room film and are back for the second one, where they're hoping to take the fight to the people that are behind these games. Whether they're successful or not, we're obviously going to find out here in a week, because next week I am going to be talking about the sequel, Escape Room Tournament of Champions. So we are absolutely going to be talking about that next week for sure. But that is it, y'all. That is Escape Room. I'm excited to watch it with you tonight because, again, it's not a bad movie. It's not a bad movie in the least bit now. It's just, it's kind of a boring movie. It's a tame movie. It is not scary. It is not scary at all. Just to be clear, y'all, this is going to be like probably the most non-horror film that we're going to watch together on our watch party this entire year. But we'll still have fun with it, though. And that means it's time to take your asses over to the Facebook page so you can get the link for the watch party room, which is open. Folks, we got Fear Street 2 and Escape Room both coming up for y'all tonight. I want to see your faces. Let's go. Get to the Facebook group, grab the link, and let's get going. But that's going to do it for me tonight. Make sure you're coming back next week when we are going to be talking the final Fear Street film, Fear Street Part 3, and we are talking Escape Room Tournament of Champions in our continual Summer of Horror series. So that's going to do it for me, folks. Check out some of our old episodes. Make sure to comment on our videos here. Give me a thumbs up. Even a thumbs down. It's all good for me. I just want that interaction. But my name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.